Check. That's ready. I'd like to call to order the May 5th, 2025 Richland County Planning Commission work session meeting today. On to number 2, the public notice I have. Staff, please confirm the following. In accordance with the Freedom of Information Act, a copy of the agenda was sent to the news media, persons requesting notification, and posted on the bulletin board located in the County Administration Building. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Staff, could you take attendance for this meeting?
Sure. Yonke,
Here.
Frierson, Johnson, Duffy, Metz,
Here.
Durant,
Here.
Taylor,
Here.
Sirks,
Here.
Grady. We have a quorum.
Thank you, staff. Staff, do we have any additions or deletions to this agenda today?
No.
Commissioners? No. With that, we can move on to number 4, and I'll flip this to staff. Thanks.
I'll just preface before we turn it over to Mr. Rydell Hoover to go over the updates, is that we won't be asking you to take a vote during this work session. It is just to discuss additional changes based off of the feedback we received from citizen input before the last planning commission meeting. At the planning commission, the full commission meeting this afternoon, then the commission can they have 2 options in front of you. You can either choose to make a motion to move the ordinance forward with the changes discussed at the work session, or you can make a motion to have us bring back a clean copy that shows all changes discussed for the June meeting that you can then move forward to council for their review. So just to be clear, because what's printed in the agenda did not include any changes we discussed at this work session, you can either move it forward to council with what we discussed at the work session, or request a clean copy to come back to you in June with what we discussed, and then vote to move that forward. Just want to make that clear ahead of time to make it a little bit easier when it's time to make a motion for you all later today.
Thank you. Any questions, Commission, for staff on that? Okay, sounds good.
All right, I will now turn it over to Mr. Rydell Hoover.
All right, good morning, commissioners. So today for the work session, we'll be going over some the proposed changes that staff has put together to the Olympia Neighborhood Character Overlay. And these are based on public input that we got. And as we discussed in the last meeting, we felt that it had a bit of fundamental changes that we wanted to put more work into and wanted Planning Commission more involved in to help us establish what direction we want the overlay to go in and what parameters we want to have for the overlay. So some of the things that we went into these changes that we had in mind were more firmly sticking to the purpose statement that's in the proposed overlay, as well as affirming that the standards that we put into the overlay exist within the confinements of that we set in the applicability section, mainly that overlay standards apply to features of the parcel that are visible from the right-of-way. So as far as an architectural overlay, that's kind of the bounds that we want to try and set for the standards that we propose, and that we don't overstep by going beyond those confinements. So I'll just be going through the the updates that we have proposed that we're giving to you. You'll find those in blue. So the yellow ones were the ones that public had already seen, and then the blue are the new updates that we're showing to Planning Commission for the first time. So you can see in section 3AI that we've removed the standards regarding where structures can be placed on the lot. This was our reasoning behind this change, was to help mitigate some other issues that came along with dictating lot placement and the side setbacks, particularly when it comes to parking and accessing the rear of the lot, and that the overlay, in order to maintain the front facade and our standards of trying to protect the character of the front facade by not having having a front yard dominated by parking, and trying to encourage that any parking, any garages, things like that are moved to the rear of the lot. We felt that easing up on the standard that the primary building has to be in the middle of the lot by allowing them to shift it to either side would make access to the rear of the lot easier for the property owner to accommodate moving parking into the rear of the lot and protecting the front facade for neighborhood character. And moving on to, along the same lines in 3BI, we also got rid of the side yard setbacks. However, we did maintain the front yard setbacks, as we thought that was an important part of the neighborhood character and maintaining the historic front yard setback. So that is the only setback requirement for that the overlay covers. Any other setbacks for the side and rear would go to the underlying zoning. All right, the next point, or the next change is on DII, or 2, I guess. This one it relates to the question that we posed to Planning Commission last month, and what kind of philosophy we want to go off of for the neighborhood character overlay, whether it be having the neighborhood character at just the parcel level, and that you have on an individual lot, you want to encourage just a facade that meets the historic character, or did we want to have the overlay go beyond just the parcel level into a more neighborhood scale and trying to bring back the restore the original historic character when it was first originally laid out. And in that original character, there was, when the Olympia was originally developed, the buildings were set forth in a way that no two buildings side by side were the same, and then you would have the same type of building across the street from you. So that was the neighborhood scale type of neighborhood character that we were posing to Planning Commission last time. And so for the updates, we kind of went with somewhere more in the middle. I think it leans a bit more towards the parcel level while still having a little bit of the neighborhood scale. So for the 3D2, we got rid of the standard that it has to reflect the house across the street, thereby giving property owners a bit more leeway into what they can put on the lot. They'll still have to have a historic housing type, but rather than dictating the specific house that needs to go on that lot, they would just need to choose a housing type that is historic. Those housing types we will define in the style guide that will be available to the public to see those different types of houses. And then for D3, we got rid of the standard regarding massing. How we came about with that one goes back to the right-of-way, trying to keep our standards within the confines of what can be seen from the right-of-way, and that by dictating the massing, we felt that if a property owner built out in a way that goes into the rear of the lot and that it's not visible from the right-of-way, however, if we're dictating massing, then we think that oversteps the bounds of the overlay, and that we're saying that we're restricted by the right-of-way, but also just because you're building something in the back, we have massing restrictions. So we felt the massing restrictions were not in line with the confines of restricting the overlay to just the public right-of-way.
And I'll jump into, because that was one of the comments that came back from the citizens regarding that, if the largest, if you see what was in yellow, if the largest historic house along the street was the Old Hill housing type that may have been a one-story housing type, then the comment we received is that if someone did try to build on that block, they couldn't exceed that same one-story housing type, where there are some old and new hill housing types that are 2 stories. And so they felt as if the massing limitation to the oldest historic home on the street would prevent them from being able to go to a different historic home type that might be larger than the oldest historic home on the street.
Thank you, staff. I was going to ask what the definition of massing is, because I haven't heard of it.
Basically the square footage.
Okay.
That they're allowed to have. We also thought that rather than having a specific standard dictating massing, which we already didn't think would be consistent with the confines of the overlay, at least we have standards for the building height as well as the underlying zoning setbacks, we believe would control the massing to some extent without us having a standard specifically for the massing of a building.
Have any questions at this moment? No? We're following along? Okay, great. Thanks.
Okay. And then the next one in section F is more just clarification, and that the standard is for all exterior walls that are visible from the right-of-way, not just damaged walls, and as well as not defining the type of siding material that you need to use, just that they have to look a certain way. They don't have to be a specific type of material as long as they look, as long as their visuals is consistent with historic character. Then on section G, as well as through section G, we added in hipped roofs, and that there are that was a bit of an oversight. There are historic houses with hipped roofs, so we added that one in. And then in section I, with the building foundation treatment, the historic housing type, or the character of the historic houses was that they were originally built pier and beam construction, and then over the years, foundation skirts were introduced to many of the houses, and so we just added it in that if you have a new build, that matches that appearance of foundation skirting, even if it's not pier and beam beyond or behind the foundation skirt. Just by having the look of a foundation skirting, then that would bring it into character with the other historic homes. And then in section J, we made an exception for handrails, where previously an addition of a porch element that was not historically present was not allowed. We felt that as far as accessibility goes, that we should make an exception for handrails.
Are ramps something else?
Ramps are, we have there's a separate section we have for ramps, and that they're allowed. We just ask that they be done in a way that doesn't damage any historic features. Let's see. In section L, we thought that putting driveways and curb cuts was redundant. So we just the language will just say driveways, as well as we thought there was some confusion in standard L4 with the permitted driveways. We didn't want it to be confused that you needed a specific permit, a driveway permit. So we just didn't want to use that kind of language for that standard. So it'll just say driveways in the language. Further on in section O, we just clarified that these doors are exterior, so any interior doors, the overlay will not touch. And then for the windows, we made a few changes in that we clarified that these are windows that are visible from the right-of-way. So any windows that are on the rear side of the property, the overlay wouldn't dictate. And in P3, we thought the language about the storm windows wasn't really a standard. It was more just exposition, and that we wanted to cut down on that extraneous language and just make the point that any storm windows that are installed, that they're allowed, since so you can make your home more energy efficient. And we just ask that in their installation that you don't damage any of the historic features of the window surrounds. And then in that section P5, we just got rid of the language that dealt with rear windows that weren't visible from the right-of-way. Similarly, in section Q regarding chimneys, we clarified the language and brought the standard, narrowed the standards so that it was restricted by what's visible from the right-of-way. In the Old Hill historic homes, all of the chimneys were installed in a way that they weren't visible behind the roof line. So we felt that anything to do with the chimneys in historic Old Hill homes wouldn't be applicable for the overlay, since they wouldn't be visible from the public right-of-way. However, New Hill houses do have chimneys on the front facades and the side facades, so those would fall under the overlay. And then finally, the parking requirements, so section T. We wanted to clarify when it came to parking that when someone's developing a lot and they submit their site plans, that they have to identify off-street parking as required by the building use, whether it be single family or multifamily, whatever the required number of parking spaces that they needed to identify, that they can only identify spaces that are either the driveway or they have to identify parking spaces in the rear lot or in the driveway. So this prevents them from claiming parking in the front of the house where it would affect the front facade by having parking in front of the house. So we added that standard to clarify and hopefully ease some fears from the neighborhoods of how we're handling parking with this, with the overlay. And so those are the updates that we have made since the previous draft that was shown to the public. And that was our reasoning behind each one of those changes. So if Planning Commission has any questions or suggestions or clarifications, or thinks we should go more in one direction for restrictions on certain aspects or ease off of them, then this would be the time for us to work through those changes.
Thank you, staff. I'm going along through the packet and the new handout that we have, and I see didn't have any changes beyond number 1 of parking, so that's probably why we stopped copying it in our packet, because you have, demolition structures, all this in the handout, but in our packet, page 32, it kind of stops at the top there, just so everything lines up. I was following along with the two. I know we're working towards one concise document, so it probably doesn't matter what the letters were before, just whatever it is final, so.
Right.
That's okay, yes.
Oh, yeah, we did move the parking, or we thought it would make more sense having the demolition criteria at the end. So we did just move a few of the, reformat it to make a little bit more sense that way.
Hey, Commission, this is up for discussion and questions for staff.
Chair, got a question.
Yes,
Staff.
Commissioner Metz.
Could you actually explain the chimney portion again for QI? Why that was taken out, I guess, I'm sure there's dates and all that for Old Hill, New Hill that we saw in the beginning of the packet, but just kind of curious.
Sure, yeah. So the different housing types for Olympia neighborhood, you'll see in the packet as well that there's certain parts of the neighborhood that are Old Hill that was developed in turn of the century, early 1900. And all of those housing types were built in a way that mostly side gable roofs where you'll have the peak of the roof, and then any chimney would come out from behind the peak of the roof, so it wouldn't be visible from the front facade. And so that's how we kind of got those changes to the chimney, and that all of the Old Hill housing types, since the chimney isn't visible from the front facade, if we're going about changing the overlay to respect that we're not going to dictate things that aren't visible from the front facade, we decided to just leave out reference to Old Hill, and that no chimneys are visible from the front facade already. Whereas in New Hill, the housing types developed there, it was more common to have a chimney visible from the front or the side, and in that case, it would affect the neighborhood character from as visible from the right of way.
Curious, thanks. Was that feedback, I guess, from the community for that?
Yeah, the community did bring it up to us and helped us clarify that.
Oh.
I have the document that the overlay document on the screen with all the good visuals. So when you mentioned the chimney or the old construction, the new, when we took the tour, it was helpful to look at that. I don't know if we wanted to look at anything again. you're referencing?
Yeah, we can bring up some of the pictures of the old housing types. Those will, any visuals will ultimately be put in the style guide that we're developing, not the overlay itself. I believe this is. Okay, so you can see these old hill housing types where the peaks of the roofs here, and so the chimney would be, you would not be able to see it from behind that roof. And they would always, according to the architectural survey, that was the case for all these old hill types, whereas you can see in the new hill types that the chimneys are visible. You're welcome.
And Mr. Chair, while we have the pictures up, you can also see, like, when it goes back to the massing question of the, for instance, Old Hill Type 1 versus Old Hill Type 4. And if you limited new builds to the same size as the oldest historic structure on the street, if the oldest historic structure is an Old Hill Type 4, then you wouldn't have been able to put in an Old Hill Type 1 or 2 style home. So that's one of the reasons why that was taken out, related to the massing.
How did you define the type numbers?
So these were defined by the National Historic Registry. So that's where we got that information from.
It wasn't by date or by size?
These were all put at this around the same date, and like I said, in the development originally, they had these 6 housing types, and they would never put the same type next to each other, and they had the type across the street. Those would match, and so this was basically their stock of different housing types that they developed the neighborhood using.
It's helpful to see it. Thank you.
Sure.
Okay. Questions, Commissioner? Comments? What can we add to this? Anything we need to take away? Yes, Commissioner Taylor.
Based on the previous example you gave of Old Hill Type 1 and 4, is it just safe to assume that the single levels are always less square footage than the 2 stories?
I can't say for sure, but it does seem likely that was the case given the footprints and other things like that. But I can't say for sure on the exact numbers.
It's safe to assume the lot sizes are pretty comparable in the neighborhood?
Yes, I can. Yeah, so you can see that the lot sizes are fairly uniform throughout the community.
There's not a lot of hidden space in the back to make a first story be much bigger.
Right, yeah, so that's why we believe that absent of a specific massing standard, that when you account for the underlying zoning side and rear setbacks, that'll be one way to control the massing, in addition to our standard that you can't build more than 2 stories in the neighborhood.
Talk about the map at all? Any changes since last time?
There have been no changes to the map.
Chair,
Yes.
quick curiosity question. Are the new builds limited to a particular square footage?
They are not, we don't provide a specific square footage. Those would, that number would only come from the combination of the height restrictions and the setbacks, as well as being able to fulfill the parking requirements.
And all new builds would also have to go, we're working to come up with the requirements for the Architectural Review Board. So they would also have to go in front of that board to make sure they meet all the rest of the architectural standards in the overlay as well.
Architectural Review Board, is that part of the tail end of this process? After we get through commission and through council?
Correct. We're already drafting some of the requirements to sit on that architectural review board to make it similar to what the city of Columbia has, but maybe not exactly like what they have. And we'll be presenting that, those recommendations to county council because they'll have to appoint the members to that board as well.
Looking for interested candidates? Overall, pretty positive feedback from the neighbors. Is that correct? This is what they would like to protect their neighborhood?
Yes, that's correct. We've gotten some additional comments related to tree protection, which we don't feel as if that fits into this particular architectural standard, so we may look at that separately. So we do know the neighborhood would like to see some additional tree protection in the neighborhood, but related to the architectural standards, we've gotten pretty positive feedback. We try to let them know that you're having this meeting today and that the planning commission will be also discussing it, this afternoon at your full meeting, but overall, we've gotten pretty positive feedback.
Will this be a living document where they could come back and add tree standards? Or something else that we're not looking at right now?
Well, we haven't determined yet if we would want to put the tree standards in this or do a separate type of regulation or policy related to trees in the area.
Might be a silly question. Do they have their own master plan like Lower Richland does? Or is that what this serves as?
Yeah, the Capital District has a master plan. It was done, the city of Columbia and Richland County together, and so this overlay was one of their suggestions out of that. And so this came out of the master plan that was done for the Olympia, Granby,
And Whaley.
Whaley neighborhoods.
And that document was more, was not regulatory. It was meant to put forth ideas for different projects and implementations, of which a neighborhood character overlay was one of the recommendations that came about the master plan.
Document's gonna include 3 maps, I see. The total overlay and the separation of the Old Hill and New Hill, correct?
Correct.
Thoughts, commission? Commission, I guess, discussion on what we want to do. I feel like it would be good for the public to have some more time to look at this final draft, since it's the first time we're looking at it right now. Unless anyone is eager to move on this and get the ball going, I'd like to hear your thoughts.
Sure.
Yes, Commissioner.
Yeah, I mean,
Welch.
I think that's a good idea. Go ahead and have a clean copy and let everybody see a clean version of this and digest it and review it. Go from there.
We can get a clean copy out to you all this week, and then, so the recommendation would be this afternoon during planning commission is that someone make a motion that we come back to plan, accept the changes discussed at the work session and bring a clean copy with those changes to you all to review and approve at your June meeting. You can do it now.
Sounds like a plan. Okay. Okay, so we just discussed number 4A, the text, in pretty good detail. Thank you for that, staff. Not much to talk about the map, because there's no changes. That's 4B. We are in 5 additional discussion for our workshop meeting. Is there anything else we need to know about on this? Staff? No? Final thoughts?
No, not related to this.
Okay.
Thank you for your time today.
Thank you. Commissioner, any final thoughts on the overlay? No? This was quick and easy. I think we go ahead at number 6, if that seems fair, which is adjournment of our work session. We got to do a vote for that, right? If we do show of hands, who's ready for adjournment for this? I see unanimous. All right. We are adjourned from the work session. Thanks.